Let me turn the wheel. I don't like where that sits. Anyway, I am your host, Tom Kaczynski. Welcome to the morning show. We just call it that because I don't know what the heck I'm going to talk about today, but I decided to come on because figured why not, right? Just been out there looking at the news, what's going on. Just a reminder before we get into everything, the Telegram group is t.me/at Atlantic Homeland. The Venmo's at CVCPRV. Thank you for your help as always. And we're just looking what's out there in news world today, right? A lot of people talking about some different things. Let me tell you what I'm seeing out there, things I'm looking at, and you put the weight on it you want to. Stu Peters has an interesting piece out this morning with a military veteran wife. It's actually from yesterday evening, but that's fine. Showing some things that were being extracted from her husband. And I tell you, if you were looking at those little Hydra things, I forget what the name is. That was Hydra, or there's some little technical name. They're these little creatures. It's weird how these little plasmoids that are coming out look like it, like these little metallic filament phalange things. It's interesting. It's worth taking a look. And these were not things this person experienced, but under the black light, they're glowing up pretty well. And this is something that happened after they did what they had to do to stay in the service. And what does that mean for the long term? Especially if they're self-replicating. God knows. I don't want to think about that. A lot of rumors going around about banking this morning. Reading site after site supposedly being down. I do think that we are on the verge of a great financial reset. And I think the two things are interlinked. I don't think you can understand why the push is happening so quickly and so rapidly to get people on board with the biotech agenda, let's call it that, and at the same time that we see the debt ability of the U.S. dollar. I mean, think of it this way. If the U.S. dollar and the Chinese yuan go down at the same time, okay, these are the two biggest functional economies in the world, you're going to have a global currency reset. It's sort of an inevitability, and it seems, and it's no secret, you can read the World Economic Forum, you can read the bankers themselves, all the usual suspects for those who are in this world, are saying they want the command economy. They talk about things like UBI, automation, and this idea of you being paid for what you do. And one of the interesting things, and we posted it in the Atlantic Homeland chat, is Pfizer actually put a new patent out there, apparently, that would be responsible for allowing internal tracking at 2.4 gigahertz frequency, somehow interacting with your body. Now, they don't say explicitly what it is in the body that's interacting with you, but for those who've been following along a little bit, maybe some graphene might be in that picture. I think that's really possible. And, cryptocurrency moving along in certain ways where you have the blockchain, you can trace everything everywhere. All these pieces are coming together in a way where we see the realization of this Internet of Bodies concept, advance beyond the Internet of Things, where you are part of an integrated system of organic and synthetic components being run by some other entity. And what that entity is, well, who knows? If you're a Christian like I am, and by the way, if you're not a Christian, go read your Bible. This is the beast system you're seeing come out bit by bit, and it's really not as hard to make the judgments now as it used to be, understanding what's happening out there in the world and seeing those things. But we also see ongoing stress. If you want to change the financial system, you usually have to have a war. It was certainly that way when the U.S. dollar was set up as the global reserve currency. I could turn the car back on today for me to just sit here without any heat coming out, but we'll do that. What was I going to say? So the fact you see all those, I think we got, 4 carriers out there towards South China Sea. We've got Taiwan actively asking, the support of Australia for fighting. Japan is as well. I think India. We'll see. The U.S. is weird. The U.S. is acting real weird. But our government, I mean, who knows? I don't even know how Biden is in there and who he represents. Who the hell knows? I mean, we don't know anymore. And, actually, well, let's talk about our government. The FBI is going after parents for going to school board meetings. The CIA, there's a series of stories that they're getting purged from every country because I guess maybe their spies are better than our spies. I wonder why. The CIA's been recruiting wokeism. I guess that didn't work for them. So our external, eyes and ears are gone. As much as the CIA represents anything, of course, the CIA was related to the Fed. And it kind of makes you wonder if this is a banking cartel war behind it. It often is. Maybe the Europeans are trying to purge the Americans out. Hard to say. Because it seems like, on the other hand, the Russians are playing pretty cool. They demonstrated their hypersonic missile. I think they can probably blow up every city on the East Coast in about 8 minutes now. I mean, that's pretty interesting. And in the meantime, what are we investing in? Transgender surgery. So go America. Whatever state you live in, by the way, pick a state you want to be in when America isn't America anymore, and the politics will change. The political stupidity will go away. The culture is what's going to need to be fixed. I've been saying that for years, and I'm right about it. The politics up here are ridiculously stupid, but that's because money has bought them. Once money doesn't have meaning, people here are more or less sane, except for the ones who might be lost due to self-inflicted wounds, if you get what I'm saying. But in any case, they were having some Russian commentator, and he was talking about China and Taiwan, and he was saying, I forget where I was watching this, and he was saying that if China's going to take Taiwan, now's the time. And that's probably correct, actually. Taiwan is not going to become more reasonable and from the Chinese perspective. I mean, not that they should submit. I'm not arguing that at all. And the economic dominance China was allowed to have in manufacturing will not continue. India alone will prevent that. That's a given. So if China wants to try to do a land grab, now's the time they got to do it, and they're never going to have better odds. They've been churning out ships. Warfare is all about the element of surprise. China's used their surprise attack in the way this biological war has been fought. Did they have friends in America? Probably. Good morning, Vicky. Good morning, Jewel. Outside of Maine, what other state would I say looks desirable? Well, you'd have to give me more details of what you're looking for, but I'll tell you what I like. I like rural areas, low population density, high cultural cohesion, not an overwhelming federal presence. Like if you have a big military base near you or something like that, that's not great. So I tend to like Appalachia. Eastern Tennessee is nice. Eastern Kentucky, Southern West Virginia, very nice. There's places in the T of Pennsylvania. I mean, some of these places have bad governments. New York's is too bad. Kentucky's decent. I like Kentucky. But it's a different culture. And if you're up here in New Hampshire, believe it or not, Vermont, if you don't want attention drawn to yourself, Vermont's actually quite nice. If you're a Canadian, a lot of good people hiding in New Brunswick very quietly. You're in North Wales. Well, that's good. You're far away from London. London's a nightmare from what I hear. So it's good to hear that. I imagine life is good in the Welshlands, minus the fact. Actually, maybe you guys should try to do your own thing. I mean, I don't know. Are the Welsh? Do you guys still want to hang with the English? I mean, the Scots always threaten to leave. At least they get stuff out of it. It's kind of weird to me, like how the UK system works. How England doesn't have a parliament, but all these constituent parts don't. Scotland gets to vote on what England wants, but England doesn't get to vote on what Scotland wants because England isn't captured in Britain. Good luck explaining the UK. Other places. Montana would be good. I mean, if you can stand the cold, I'm sure the Dakotas are nice. A lot of people move to the Ozarks. Yeah, I believe you. I mean, are they? I guess the question is, they probably don't represent your people any more than ours represent our people. I mean, democracy's a scam anyway. Speaking of that, since you mentioned Wales, though, let me share I have a Welsh moment, right? Because I was watching The Prisoner last night. The wife and I were put that on the Patrick McGowan thing from 67, 68, something like that. It was actually filmed in Wales. Great series, and one of the great dystopian sci-fi series. And that the dystopia you're in is like an arbitrary town where it's a lot like how we live, and you see how people kind of get led astray in that, and how all these distractions exist to basically make you be at war with yourself. And I think there's something clever and Tavistocky about it that really just resonates far beyond the age of the show. But I thought that would be a good thing to watch and entertaining. Exactly. I am not a number. I always joke to call the wife, tell she's number 6. Which, if you've never seen the show, it's on YouTube for free, by the way. So you don't have to pay anything. You can go find it. You will not regret it. Watch the first episode. It's brilliant. It will really. It's one of the better sci-fi things. It's hard to find on DVD. I mean, easier over there, and I guess your region too. We keep a lot of our things on hard copy because we assume the Wi-Fi, the internet, will eventually go down, and we wanted to have things. And I kept them on copy on my computer, and the drive got fried. I've been having so many tech problems, you wouldn't believe it. My phone shuts down at random. You guys who have been here, and I just pray, Heavenly Father, let this broadcast continue without interruption if I'm saying something useful. And if I end up getting bounced, well, the Lord will have made his own decision about that. But talking about war and problems, and I'm not a number, I'm region 2, yeah. But it's one of those things where the war, China's economy is about to hit the tank. The job creation thing is over, and their people are kind of bored. I mean, the social credit score system, it lets the elites track the people, but the people don't want to do anything because they know they have no sovereignty. So the Chinese do what they have to do, but not too much more. So they need to rile them up to something. They may, for that reason alone, decide to get themselves into a war over there with Taiwan. And I mean, it's kind of important for them if they don't want to get boxed in. They are in a different. It's an interesting geographic problem, right? On the one hand, they have a lot of friends inland. On the other hand, they have no ability to get outboard. I mean, beyond North Korea, that first island chain is a problem for them. And I mean, where else can they go? A war with India would be worse. I mean, Mongolia, they get what they want from them already. South Korea, that's interesting. But I mean, if they go to war, I'm sure if China, I mean, just thinking out loud, if China went to war with Taiwan, they would probably have to launch strikes at Japan, South Korea, and India at the same time, I would think. But maybe not. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, it would be interesting if China wanted to be really pricks. Of course, they might lose the Three Gorges Dam over that, and that's. I mean, they're going to lose an 8-figure population if anyone blows up, and Taiwan could blow it up. Um, they could blow up that semiconductor plant. It's like miles long. It's like the biggest production thing, and honestly, it's like probably the most geopolitically important part of Taiwan, besides the east-facing deep water subports, which would be a danger, an existential danger to the U.S. Navy, which is one of the reasons why they are opposing this more than a lot of other entities, because they understand the dangers of blue water fleet being able to get out there very quickly and be seen in the Pacific. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I do think. I think that China might just mix it up. I don't know. October, November, a lot of wars start. Yeah, an EMP could do it. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could do it. You could do directed energy. You know, who knows? You could shoot a typhoon at someone. I mean, we don't know what's possible in this world anymore. I think that's one of the more interesting bits and pieces of this story. Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't see a future where some U.S. does not balkanize that, and the U.S. should balkanize. Absolutely, I've said that for years. I think that when it does, I mean, I think that the problem is, you know, they had a study out. Since I mean, it's something I've studied a lot. I don't talk about it as much because I think it's all going to get kind of torn up and shredded to pieces anyway. Where it's going to be a global police state that's going to have outposts, and the rest of us are going to be kind of on the fringes. You know, around super cities. I mean, there was a new thing that came out. I forget what I was reading. It was called like Agenda 2050, and what it imagined was turning the super regions into cities. Like if you're in the United States, there's like 10 super cities. Like there's the Boston Washington corridor. There's the I think the I-4 corridor in Florida, the DC sort of hub. They separated out like the New York, Philly, Boston hub from the DC one. There's Chicago Metroplex. That's sort of Cleveland, Cincinnati thing. The Dallas, Houston, corridor. California, Silicon Valley's one. LA, San Diego Metroplex is another. I forget where the exact maps were, but you can look them up. But in any case, they imagine a vision of future of super cities that are integrated, and then them just kind of controlling the outlands and using them. I assume they want them depopulated and automated, and that's where the people who want to resist will be. You know, same thing if you were in England or in Britain, I should say. It probably would be the same thing with London, and then maybe with the industrial north. You know, maybe there'd be something. I don't know. But I do think that's something that they look at, and going to war with rural people is certainly something they've contemplated. And for the rural folk up here, I mean, a lot of us, I will say, the mindset is not like active fight. We're just kind of watching this thing, thinking this is going to destroy itself. It has to kind of self-destruct in time. But I mean, they're getting close to the red lines. I mean, if they go for direct gun confiscation in the United States, the Civil War will start. But the problem is, America's like 300 blue counties and 4,000 red counties, and so the geography is a lot more complicated than states versus states. Even though you look at the government that way, it really ends up being what would I say? It's counties working together. So, like like, I'll give you an example. In my home state of Maine, you probably would have sanity in about 11 of the 15 counties. And the ones you wouldn't, predictably, would be the ones in the Portland area near the Massachusetts line. I say New Hampshire, but they really have a heavy Massachusetts flavor because Maine was the Eastern District of Massachusetts before we gained statehood in, I think it was, 1820, something like that. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think that your suggestion is European groups centralized there. Absolutely, I think that there will be areas where, I mean, and it's geography and it's culture and it's climate, really, right? You're not going to have, absent government support. Somalis aren't a natural fit in Minneapolis. Let's just put it that way. And the fact that government puts so much money to put them there will not, in the absence of government subsidy, keep them there. They will migrate southward. And what you will see, I mean, if it came to that, and I think technology will intervene, but we had done a lot of research on it. If it had been just straight up and we weren't dealing with this weird dystopian Orwell world, you would have expected, as already happened, is that you saw a lot of the black population migrate back southward because they enjoy the climate better. And that's not an unnatural thing. And whereas, in the North Country, you see people, look a little bit like me. I mean, I'm Slavic, so I'm used to cold weather, right? My wife's Germanic, same thing. We, this is what makes sense for us. And I think that you will see a natural sort of ringing out, but the cities will be the unnatural entities around which things are built. And how well people who don't want to be part of that can offer resistance in an age of biotechnical warfare is a really interesting question. Because at some point, if they don't have it now, they will have it later, something where they will give people some sort of, let's call it an inoculation. And if you don't have that inoculation and they put this out there, it can kill your enemies. And the thing about it is, you can even see in the rhetoric being employed now by the state that there is a cavalier attitude toward the destruction of human life, of political opposition, that honestly is not dissimilar to how Stalin operated or Mao operated. And that is going to make genocide inevitable. The thing is that the genocide that is most likely in America is the state against the majority of its citizens, and certainly any right-wing leaning citizens. Whites are particularly targeted. I agree with that. Christians are particularly targeted. And these things are coming, and you can see the slippery slope very clearly. And the problem is the state has identified its enemies as those people, and the people who are enforcing it, who work for the state, who are going to be part of those groups, have never been able to get past their financial or social obligations to see that they are literally enabling the noose around their own neck. A lot of people in law enforcement, I think, now understand that. A lot of the older guys saw it, got away, and then they're in small towns. And this is where the dynamics of an American interconflict get fascinating, because a lot of the people who did get purged from these big departments, let's use the state of Massachusetts as an example. The Massachusetts State Police, under a Republican governor, of course, right, purged everyone who wasn't inoculated. And what they ended up doing was they went into small towns, into sheriffs, into whatever. So what you're going to have is the most local forms of law enforcement that are going to know who's on the ground are going to be more hostile toward both the state and federal state governments, national government, if you like. And they're going to be willing to go ahead and pass and uphold more laws, like in small townships. And if you're in New England, every township's kind of a 10 by 10 square. It's the way it's set up by the town meeting system. Made sense in the 1700s. Still sort of interesting today, but whatever. So what happens is they'll pass things where they won't enforce laws. So like if you live in real rural areas, the trick we do is simple. We just don't have police, so we don't have to have that problem. And then the sheriffs get elected to take care of the problems, which is the case of most of northern New England, with the exception of the hippies in Vermont. But they're not so much of a problem as they just support really bad ideas sometimes. But day to day, they're actually quite pleasant. And that's a culture versus ideology thing that people don't understand. But if there's a breakdown scenario, I mean, the problem is going to be up here, and the problem for everyone, really, and this is internationally, you're experiencing it in Britain, for Jewel and for anyone else listening out that way, is the breakdown of the energy supply chains, is the breakdown of the shipping systems, and there's a lot of things behind it that are not all natural. And it's going to be a bad Christmas. It's going to be bad Thanksgiving. It's going to be a rough year. And you really should be topping off your supplies. I wish I was doing more topping off my supplies. But this is going to be a struggle to make it through this, even in a good scenario. And there's lots of reasons to think, from currency collapse to international war to, ADE. I mean, just simple progression of, you keep giving people boosters to something and it changes just a little bit and you have a miscalibrated response. It's just basic virology. I mean, people fact check the idea that natural immunity exists. It's like all of a sudden 6,000 fact check. A person with a penis is not necessarily a man. It could be a woman. I mean, okay. I don't know. I don't understand this world, and I don't want to understand this world. And I think a lot of people are just waiting for it to collapse and trying not to get in the way. And I think the government's a little frustrated, to be honest with you, that more people aren't getting directly in the way in this one aspect. They want an enemy to go after so that they can change the narrative, rather from the drip, the Chinese water torture of all the things they're doing poorly. But we'll see. We'll see what the next big thing is this coming week. I think we're coming up. Or maybe next week, we're coming up on the what would I say? The debt ceiling. They're talking about maybe minting a $1 trillion coin to try to cover this. I mean, that's one way to destroy the treasury notes. And I don't know. Hyperinflation's on the way. It's coming. I mean, I've been watching it. They say the price of some real goods has jumped 50% in 1 year. I mean, how are you going to keep up with that? And it's interesting too. At the time, things have gotten really bad. If they want to keep the people quiet, they'd be throwing more stimulus. There's no talk about more stimulus, even though people actually probably need it now much more than they did previously. But the reason why is too many people are holding out on this idea that they don't want to go ahead and get injected, and they're going to hold out. So, thank you very much, Superficialdom. That's very kind of you. Appreciate that. How are you holding up down there? I hope things are all right down there. Very generous of you. Appreciate that. Let's see what else we got here. Good morning, Patches. Good morning, Keelan. Let's see. The problem with many progressives is they vote for horrendous policies that destroy communities and migrate to a safer area and repeat the process. But the problem, you're right. But here's the thing conservatives miss. Progressives are going to look at government as the tool to fix a problem no matter where they go. They absolutely do that every single time. And the problem that ends up happening is conservatives say, well, I'm just not going to be part of the system. This is why conservatism is bad. You have to either destroy the system or own the system. You can't let the system exist and have that be the means by which you're controlled if you're not participating in it, because that becomes the leverage, the wedge that's being used against you. That is the way that works. Good to see you, Tim, by the way. I worked at a local town level, and we saw these NGO monies happening all the time. And it's dirty how they play the game. What they do is they get money. There are things government's not supposed to do. So what they'll do is they'll fund something. Like they'll fund like an arts NGO. And the NGO will go in there and say, we want to donate this amount of money to this community. And they'll make certain rules. And they get their tentacles in, but they build a whole infrastructure. And this is the problem with the right wing. The right wing builds its infrastructure in its families. And a family is a wonderful thing. It's a base unit of society. But you need more than that. And when the right surrendered the church, and the church surrendered itself when it gave up to the Johnson Amendment, when the Schofield Bible. There's a lot of different pieces, but and not that the church should be a right or left wing entity. I don't mean for the church to be political, but the church's job in society was to help define the culture. And when they gave that up, then all this other craziness happened, because the left historically tried to use economics as the means to organize people, but it didn't work because the economics didn't add up. Mainly because nobody wanted to work when everything was being taken from those who did. So then they made it about victim groups and race and ethnicity. And ultimately, that's not going to work either, except that it's buying time for them to try to do direct control through technology, where we are now made. They decided if they can't make man fit the machine, or I was going to say, if the machine fit man, that is to say government, state, all that stuff, and this is what Come Out of Babylon talks about in depth, is that instead of that, what they could do was they could make the machine go into man. And I think that's what we're dealing with now. Part of that, we've been dealing with indirect control mechanisms, propaganda, currency control, governmental war. Now it's going to be direct. It's going to be biological integration of technology, right? It's going to be direct surveillance, state watching you at all times. And, it's going to get to the point where it's going to interfere with your thinking capacity and where we will be occupied beings. How they're going to hack humanity, that's the story of our times. and how much defense we have, well, that's a spiritual question at this point. Because I think if it's a purely raw biological question, at some point any biological system can be broken down. The world ends. Entropy is the rule of physics. All biological organisms, with the exception of this stupid little Hydra creature, apparently, die. And that is something that people really need to begin to understand, that that's the fight you're going for. So the thing is, a lot of people who otherwise understand that, all right, we could fight a conflict to try to prevent certain things, understand that all we're doing is enabling a terrible outcome that is slightly better than the worst outcome of not being human beings at all. And it's very hard to get yourself worked up to the idea of being public enemy number one to fight to destroy everything. I mean, maybe some ecotopians might do it or something, but they're usually on board with this. Most of the people who understand the problem are people who care and preserve for people around them, whether it be family, whether it be kin, whether it be culture. And it's very hard for them to go forward with the sort of accelerationism that would actually make a difference. And they know that protests are useless. They're nothing but honeypots. It's understood at this point. That's why nobody's doing it. And people can do individual things. But even at this point, I mean, if you're at a point in America where you're getting arrested for going and saying, I don't want my kids to be taught this in school as a domestic terrorist, you have lost your First Amendment right of assembly. I mean, that's gone. Freedom of speech has been functionally stopped by the technological companies, right? Freedom of assembly's gone because of an overweening police state. It's honestly, if it's a little bit more selectively employed than, say, they're dealing with in Melbourne for our Australian friend here, or in London at some point that Bojo put out there, it's no different. And we're seeing this all throughout the Anglosphere. It's absolutely crazy. Good morning. Everyone say good morning to Dana while we're doing the show this morning. But what I was going to say, let me go back because I saw something here. Okay, Tim's here. No, I don't want to say that. There's a fairly significant back to the land movement in the U.S., the number of homesteading. Oh, yeah, people are growing food, man. I mean, we got 20 chickens out back. I mean, so we're there. I mean, my wife and I are pretty good. I think that's what we said. We're not really farmers. We're homesteaders. Homesteaders can grow a little bit of a lot of things. A farmer can grow a lot of little things. And it's sort of a different orientation, and it's different strategies and different techniques. Both are good, just different. They're not big problems for one another. But I do think that, the problem is, as an American, and maybe Australians and Britons can understand this too. Australians more than Britons, though, because you got China in your backyard. And Britain, the French aren't that big of a problem. Napoleon ain't gonna come back from the grave, right? The external dangers to our nation make it very difficult for us to internally destroy the sort of corruption that's within. And a lot of people, and this is the ugly truth of it, but this is the honest truth, are bought into this system in America where the wealth has served us well, and so we've learned way too well to look the other way. We're a very corrupt nation. We're Babylon. We're Mystery Babylon. Revelation 18. Why am I hiding it? We are corrupt, and we worship our wealth, and we worship our sensuality, and we worship our military prowess, and we don't have a core. We have an exoskeleton of iron and a core made of jelly, and so we can't resist on the inside. All we do is we squish around kind of like this, like someone who just got the thing and who's having a palsy incident. It's a bad spot, and I don't think we're alone in this. But eventually, a little more pushing and the dark winter that they so want will be an inevitable consequence. And I'm not endorsing it because I don't want to be sitting it out in jail, but I'm telling you that it'll happen because you can only push people so far. And a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people are working for less than they should. And it's totally induced. It's an ideological purge. And people understand that. And as the stuff comes out more and more, the only question we're kind of wondering who's watching this, and I think it's a good question, is at what point will the people who were the victims of the government interventions begin to understand what was done to them? At that point, alliances might be possible. It was interesting, last thing you'd think of, but there was starting to be a little bit of noise about even BLM fighting back against the sort of mandates in New York City. I mean, isn't that a change in the narrative? And what are they going to do? Are they going to send the military in to repress them? The funny thing is, I always tell you guys this: evil destroys evil in a lot of ways. And what happens is you might see these sort of left-wing agitator groups that they were sort of the controlled, beast, if you want to think of it that way. And they might be the mouth that goes out there and starts biting them like rabid dogs when the system says, "Oh, you can't do that anymore." And they can take away the money from them, but what they can't take away from them, because they did the same thing to BLM after the 2016 election, after the shooting in Dallas where those 5 officers died, and it probably cost them some votes. What they could do is they can still go out there and they can riot and they can tear things up. And you think the police are going to stop them? The police don't care. I mean, how could you care if you're the police? I mean, realistically, if you look at this system, you'll be like, well, you were the ones enabling them. You see, the FBI was testifying before Congress the other day, like, we don't track violence for Antifa because it's an ideology. It's not a group. We look at anarchist groups in general. So, okay, well, you know what? I'm an ideology. I mean, it's amazing how certain people get away with such Orwellian doublethink, but that's because the money demands it, because they want these things as a force of destruction, because they want a global culture. And this is what the challenge comes down to. The technology makes it harder, but the basic analysis that I've done for years doesn't really change. It's that they have to destroy the system to remake the system. And when they destroy the system, there's going to be an opening for some period of time where other alternatives can proliferate, just like the White Russian Army is an example. Or, for a while, it looked like Germany might go socialist, after World War One. They did for a little bit under Weimar, but I mean, then the Freikorps was around. So it's going to be a mess for a while. And there's going to be competing layers of sovereignty. And could it divide into bits? Maybe. Could there be a war for different parts? Maybe. Could there be weird understandings where there's just like this sort of disorganized zone with like a sham government? Well, that happens in lots of third world places and in Latin America. I mean, North America is going to behave more like Latin America in the future. Why not? I mean, our populations change to reflect it. So it's hard to say, but I mean, the idea of competing sovereignty, I talked with Lamprey about this on his show. There's not People are going to pick and choose which government they want to support depending on what they believe in. So if you live in Montana, your government may very well be your sheriff defending you against the federal government, and you may choose to stand up for that. And I think that as an organic development, you will see these actions where, short of declarations, these things start to move forward. And this is not different than American history. I mean, the militias at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts were that way. And it's sad for Massachusetts. They're losing Smith & Wesson to Tennessee, but they used to care about having weapons to defend themselves. Now they've given themselves over. Massachusetts is lost. I mean, maybe some places in the Berkshires, but I mean, Connecticut's gone. Most of Rhode Island, the city swallowed it. The mega city. I mean, New York, basically, if you want to think of it. Babylon, if you think of New York, Babylon basically swallowed the whole East Coast, all the way from Washington up to Philadelphia. I'd argue most of New Jersey, all the way over into NEPA a little bit. Then through southern New York, Connecticut, most of Mass, and even as far north as Portland, Maine. Portsmouth and Portland are definitely those sorts of cities. If you drive through Algonquin, Maine, and you see there's more rainbow flags there than at a BronyCon, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, justice is not blind. It looks the other way. Amen. I read something in Talmud regards the absolution of responsibility when they tell you what's coming. But they're telling you it's coming, man. They're telling you all sorts of things. Predictive programming. That's why I talk about this stuff, We are seeing the takedown of the West. Although, interestingly, you might be seeing the takedown of Israel, too. Israel's put themselves in a pretty bad spot. Lots of enemies. Iranians still want to get a piece of them, and they're a better plan than they have been. They got all their people on these jabs. Albert Pike said that they would be gone. The force of Zionism would be spent. Zionism was the flip side of what the Germans were doing. I mean, and they came out of the same place. Herzl and Hitler came out of the same Vienna. People don't know their history, but it's not like a secret. You can't say that. Well, why do you think the ideas are so similar? Apartheid states that keep different people apart. And look, okay, fine. Just own it. And they do. But then they complain, oh, the kvetching, whatever. I'm not here to talk about that. That stuff's all well understood. And you know what? Ultimately, in the end, we're down to the point where there's going to be two groups, humanity and not humanity. And if humanity comes together to defeat the machine, I'm sure the groups of humanity that want to be a part can understand, you go here where you want this, and you go here, and we can get along. And that's what we have to do. We're going to have to be a little migratory for a while. The idea of being in fixed states and borders, that's gone. In fact, in terms of your own preparation, you better have a mobile plan if you need it. I mean, I wish ours was better than it is, but the reality is events might overtake you in a way where you have to move hundreds or thousands of miles if you're in America in a very short order for reasons beyond your control. And if you have some ability at mobility, harder for people I know in Europe and Australia and other places. where they're limiting that. Mortal engines, right? Yeah, we need big trains. Actually, that's not a terrible idea. If you live near a coast, having boats not a bad idea. Going through rivers. Think how they don't think. They are going to don't do what everyone else is doing. That's good. I mean, even if your plan is not great, if it's unique and people don't see it, you got a shot. What's the best case scenario in my opinion? The Lord Jesus comes down tomorrow and says, "You know what? This is too disgusting for me to even watch. You down, you up, game over." That's the best case scenario. Other than that, honestly, the longer it takes to go down, the harder it's going to be when it falls. If it falls in winter in the northern hemisphere, a lot of people are going to die of freezing. A lot of people are going to die of suicide. Um, there's not good scenarios. The problem is there's no leadership to put it together. It's not an impossible problem. It's that the arsonists are the ones in office. If governments if people were able to purge their governments, like I hate to use this example, like look at Sweden and Denmark. They got rid of the COVID restrictions. Things are working fine over there. Japan's doing the same thing. They're using ivermectin. There are solutions, but the banks have their claws too deeply into the leaders of the West, and the banks and technology are working together. That's what cryptocurrencies kind of have ended up being, and they want to control the Western world of North America, much of East Asia, and Europe. And if they do that, they'll be pretty good shape. I don't know where Russia fits into it. Russia's canny, so it's hard to talk about that. But I think the best case scenario for who? I mean, I guess there's a thought I have that's not generous that I'll share, that people who did things that were not helpful to themselves may suffer the consequences of their actions. I pray for mercy. I expect justice. If those people malfunction and they're not just walking down the path to biodigital control and they all disappeared, would be a different world with saner people, for the most part. That would not be so bad. And that could happen. I mean, who knows? I mean, do they know vulnerabilities that were created or not created? Because, I mean, the one thing we know with the spikes is they're immunosuppressive. They cause you to have greater vulnerability. And if you have something out there, or maybe a third-party actor, someone might say biological warfare. These states don't trust each other. So China might just say, okay, let's send another one out that kills white people, or black people, or whatever groups of people they want to kill. And then it takes advantage of the inherent vulnerabilities created by the people who've been injected in such large numbers, especially since they will have the actual knowledge of this. I mean, it's a terrible, mindless warfare to think. I shouldn't say mindless, it's mindful. But, like, if you're imagining scenarios, I mean, I suppose you could imagine a scenario where the world population drops by some significant percentage, and the people who are gone are the people who were most on board with the sort of terrible prospect that was out there. And then, maybe that levels the odds, and the survivors will finally be awakened in a way they couldn't be any other way. I mean, I don't know how you describe that as a happy outcome, but I guess the problem is you got to look at long-term versus short-term. I mean, I'll tell you what, this is an element of Christian theology, right? How many lives are worth saving one soul? Well, I mean, if a soul is eternal and life is mortal, if it's a mathematical equation, one soul is worth an infinite amount of lives because it has much more existence to it. Weird math, right? But this is like the sort of thing states look at, and that's one of the reasons why states end up being sort of evil, because the utilitarian algebra doesn't add up in a way that people can naturally relate to. And I don't know. I do expect that we will see the usage of food and fuel shortages to induce people into greater subservience, adherence, coherence with the system. And they will use that as means to propagandize and attack those people who try to be independent. After they take away their money, they're going to go directly after their supplies. They'll engineer famine and say, we're going to go attack the hoarders, which are the preppers or the people, even the people who just take care of things, which is why your survival strategy can't be merely individualistic. If you live in a neighborhood, you better know the people on your street, who you're going to work with, who you're not. If you're in a community, and that's hard because communities are going to betray you if you're not on the same page. So why I actually have been structuring my own thinking that eventually I'm going to put together as a church. We are the persecuted, we are the unvaccinated, and we are the reviled. I mean, we are the that's what we are. We are the undefiled. That's the phrase I've been using. And because we're trying to hold out, and it's hard, and it's going to be a long losing battle until the very end, I think, when they will be lost forever, and we, whether we die or we live, will have lived our lives honestly and in receipt of what we were supposed to do, which is to honor that we were created, and as created beings, honor the wishes of our creator to live the life we were intended as created beings and not try to make ourselves into something else. The Tower of Babel was struck down. Sodom and Gomorrah were wrecked. The world was flooded. At some point, this whole thing gets destroyed, and even if you think that there's nothing else, fine, but this world's going to get wrecked, and technology is not going to save you. But that's the bet. That's what it is. I mean, we've managed to crawl back to 1600, where there's crusades and sub entities, and I think, who knows, maybe some of these ex-cop guys might form mercenary bands and be like, we're the official sheriffs of the county. Who knows? I mean, all it takes is one bad event, and I do think there's enough countries in this world who want to see America fall aside, who understand. I mean, it's no secret, New York, Washington, Chicago, you have the ag center, you have the finance center, you have the governmental center. Those three disappear, America's gone. Wouldn't take but 15 minutes for someone to do it, and you know what, we're so messed up we probably couldn't offer resistance and fight back. Just saying, especially if you did it the right way. So get out of Babylon. Don't be in New York. Don't be in Washington. I mean, the cities you wouldn't want to be in: Boston, New York, Philadelphia, I think would be bad to be in. Washington, wouldn't want to be there. Norfolk, Atlanta, would not want to be there. I think that's bad. Where else? Probably Raleigh, maybe. New Orleans, maybe. St. Louis. Around the Oak Ridge Laboratories, that wouldn't be great. Chicago, definitely not Chicago. Denver's going to be a target. Houston, because the oil production or the refineries there. Dallas, Biotech, yeah, they'll be. Salt Lake City, I bet, will get it, just because everyone thinks the Mormons think they're going to make it. I'm sure someone's going to take a shot at them. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, you could pick the cities, and cities that have close, like, strategic developments, military, something like that. You'd expect those places if nuclear war comes, and then how you survive it. Or if you're in Canada, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, I imagine, probably Edmonton too, Calgary, because the field's there. To be in a city under 500,000, if you got to be in a city, I would think. Let's see, how long would a well-organized rebellion last? Oh man, I don't know. Pacific Northwest is going to get ripped. If you're on the coast, the Cascadia Plate's going to go. The tectonics there are not good for long-term organization. If you wanted to survive as a small group, I mean, the readout in Idaho is pretty good, but I mean, for building a society that will survive in the long term, if nations are going to be rebuilt at any point, if there's a history after this that isn't, biblical in nature, you probably want to control the Great Lakes waterbed, or the Mississippi River. Those are going to be the two key ones. That's historically nations that have succeeded have done that. I mean, that's why in New England we talk about working with the upper Midwest when I used to do this, through the St. Lawrence Seaway being the outlet for the Great Lakes and having our own north-facing nation. Because, but there's a lot of things on the line coming. We don't even talk about, I mean, I could talk about solar, or what is it, pole shift stuff. I mean, we're overdue for that. Those things occur on a regular thing. So, I mean, at this point, survival is more a function of who you have around you, what you believe, and your ability to have coherence. If you have a place that's hilly, not too close to the ocean, somewhat temperate climate, and people you can trust, that's a good place. And better to have that relationship built on trust than moving to an idealized environment, unless you're in a mega city, in which case you all need to figure out a way to pool your resources and get out. I do think that one thing to watch for in the future is you may have an inability to buy property. We saw yesterday that story I was reporting on in the evening where the woman couldn't get a surgery because she didn't have the thing. It's not going to be long before they say you can't have a bank account and you can't buy property. And if you have things, they're going to try to box you out. So if you have friends who own or who are, now's the time to get out. And I know it's hard because the price is going to completely drop. Maybe you can trade for real assets. And we'll see. I don't know if the system maintains itself. We don't know. The crypto bubble is run by a criminal cartel in collusion with complicit unregulated exchanges waiting till the criminality is regulated. I hear they're going to approve BTC here in about 2 months in the U.S. I think that they're trying to take over it rather than fight it. The Chinese have tried to ban it, but it doesn't work because people know how corrupt China is, and Chinamen and China women are trying to get the things out of their country. So, but yeah, dollars breaking where people lose all their assets and lead to desperation, and governments wanting the pitchforks directed in another direction usually leads to war. Odds of war in the next 45 days are rising rapidly on a global level, and it will probably start with some. It can start with some smaller thing that drags others in. I've been saying maybe keep an eye on the Middle East, keep an eye on Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has been getting Israeli weaponry to use against Iran, and Iran getting linked into the Shanghai Cooperative Organization. Afghanistan falling into the Chinese orbit. Now you have pipeline politics that can bring that through. Azerbaijan doesn't like that competition because it's been running its thing through Georgia and into Turkey. And if that goes away, what will end up happening is it will cost them a lot of money, and they don't want that. So they are taking some Israeli sort of weaponry to go forward with this. And Iran understands this is war by proxy. This whole thing could blow up that Middle East. And if that blows up, countries will get drawn in. America shouldn't, by the way, but we very well may because of the influence of the Zionist lobby, and that would be a bad place for us to be all around, but it would allow China some strategic operating space maybe to go into Taiwan. So things may happen very fast, or nothing may happen. I mean, it may be we just have this long, slow, unending decline. That's the problem. I don't know how quickly it's going to happen. And the other thing in the back of my mind is that a whole bunch of people now are changed in ways that we don't fully understand, and they may be able to be activated or inactivated. I know that sounds crazy. I know people aren't ready for it. I know people think I'm a crazy guy for saying that, but I'm telling you, this stuff is here. The research is all out there. You just got to go look for it. So what do we do in the meantime? We offer praise and worship to the Lord Jesus Christ, and we ask for him to guide us. We ask for the Holy Spirit to speak to us, to tell us what we need to do to be safe, because I can't tell you the answers. I can tell you the problems that are out there, but your own personal survival, God has a plan for you. He knew you. He loved you. You were no mistake. You were no accident, and you stay fully human. You go ahead. You reach out. You ask the Lord to help. You accept that the problem we're really fighting against is our human nature and all the dumb problems it causes that we have to try to survive because of it. Ask for him to make you a new man. Accept the gift of the sacrifice of the Lord Jesus. He was willing to die for all of our sins. The only person who never did anything wrong went ahead and died for us because we couldn't do it for ourselves. God literally killed himself, if you want to think of it that way, to reconcile himself to us. And that's a pretty big gift, one we shouldn't overlook. So Heavenly Father, I just want to close today with a little bit different prayer message. Just offer praise to you for looking out for each of us. We know you're good. We know you're faithful. We ask that you lead each of us to do your will and your bidding in these final days of this world, and to help us maintain our humanity and retain the image that you intended for us, Father. So in Jesus' mighty name we pray that. Amen. I will be back. What's today? Thursday. I will be back tomorrow. You guys, I've been trying to do an evening show for you. I get asked so often, you want the evening show. I know you want it. And the internet goes to crap in the whole region in the evening. We've tried. I've talked to my neighbors about it. It's not just, even people on Wi-Fi are having problems, and I'm not on that. So, but I'm going to try to do something hopefully for that. You guys keep safe. Get right in the Word. Spend some time in the book of Revelation. Read Revelation 18 and 19. That's your homework assignment. Understand that what it's talking about here could be in the United States very easily, and the sort of problems, And look, it's an insight. Take from it what you will. Ask for some guidance. Other than that, just always be ready, and have a bag ready if you need to do something. Have more water. Have more food. Don't be shy about stocking up on supplies. Don't ever let anyone shame you into saying you don't have enough, and don't look like you have a lot, right? That's one of the key things. And, if anyone's ever moving out to neck of the woods, if you ever end up moving up to Maine, shoot us a line. We always like to have friends and neighbors, and Lord knows. That's what I need to do. I need to find someone who has sugar daddy type money, and I could build a compound. We could survive this thing, but I say that, but they're doing the same thing, and it even says in the Bible. It says in the book of I think it's the book of Joel, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but I know it says in the Bible that what happens is, basically it implies people are going to try to hide underground, and the Lord's going to suss them out, and they'll be collapsed underneath there. So in the end, the best protection you have is your faith, and that's what you'll have to trust to now. So the Lord's blessing upon each and every one of you. I am your host, Tom Kaczynski. We'll be back with the morning show again tomorrow morning, probably around 7 a.m. The 7 a.m. time seems to work for you. Thank you very much as well. I want to say thank you again, Superficial Dumb, for your very kind gift. I appreciate that, and we'll go forward. If you have comment, I've been trying to look at the comments. It doesn't show me. If you have topics you want me to talk about specifically, come to the Telegram group. Let us know, t.me/Atlantic Homeland. Also, for those who've given support the other way through Venmo, definitely appreciate it at CVCPRV. One last problem before I go, and I'm working on it. I have the audiobook of Come Out of Babylon recorded. I can't post it on Audible because they're giving me a hard time about how I recorded it. I have to decide if I want to record it over, which is a 4-hour job that's really unpleasant for me, or if I want to just figure out a different way to do that. If you got any clever ideas, put them in the comments section. I'll take a look, and I'm just looking for ways for us to stay connected that are better than this platform, because it's convenient, but I can only tell you half the story, and the other half might be the part you need to know. So I try to do the best I can. All right, you guys have a good day. God bless.